I'm a human too. I have a family. I have two kids who are devastated by these comments, and so all I'll say is just, it's obviously been a tough week.
The entire basketball world was stunned when whispers surfaced that Caitlin Clark had finally reached her breaking point. After months of taking hits on the court, carrying the league's ratings, and smiling through constant criticism, she was reportedly benched behind closed doors in a way that crossed the line. What was supposed to be an honor suddenly became humiliation, and insiders claim she walked out furious, refusing to stay silent any longer.
Reports are circulating that the golden girl of women's basketball has officially drawn a line in the sand, allegedly telling insiders she is done with Team USA.
The WNBA is scrambling. Team USA is in shock, and the fans are demanding answers. Because this moment might change the future of women's basketball forever.
It sounds like the commissioner herself, Cathy Engelbert, might have unintentionally confirmed the toxic environment that led to this shocking decision.
From the moment the news leaked, it felt like the entire sports world stopped. Team USA officials had quietly reshuffled their rotations during a closed practice. And according to insiders, Caitlin Clark wasn't just moved down the list, she was pushed so far into the background that she barely touched the floor.
They thought Caitlin Clark would be grateful just to be in the building, happy to sit at the end of the bench and learn from the legends. But it looks like the WNBA pushed their biggest star too far, and now the consequences are rolling in like a tidal wave.
This wasn't a simple adjustment or a strategic trial. It felt intentional, and everyone in the gym could sense the shift. Players whispered. Coaches avoided eye contact. Even staff members looked confused as the person responsible for the league's highest ratings stood silently on the sideline, watching others run the offense she had mastered all season. For months, fans wondered how much disrespect Clark could take. She was left off the original Olympic roster despite being the biggest name in the sport.
It started with what many are calling the biggest roster mistake in sports history, a decision that set the tone for everything that followed. When the Team USA squad was announced for Paris, the one name generating all the buzz, the name that was selling out arenas and driving TV ratings through the roof, was nowhere to be found. The selection committee hid behind the excuse of experience, claiming Clark hadn't paid her dues yet.
She absorbed cheap shots from opponents, endured constant online attacks, and dealt with a league that never seemed eager to protect her. Yet through all of it, she stayed composed. She focused on her game. She kept her head down. But this benching felt different. This wasn't physical contact. This wasn't trash talk. This was a message delivered directly to her face.
While the world was tuning in to see her logo threes and flashy assists, the powers that be decided to bench her for the entire summer before she even stepped on the court. It was a loud, undeniable message to the rookie. You might be famous, you might be rich, but you aren't one of us yet.
To the veterans, it may have seemed like maintaining the hierarchy. To Clark, it was a moment that cut deeper than any hit she took in the regular season. She wasn't just being pushed aside. She was being told she didn't belong. The same players who benefited from the massive jump in attendance and TV ratings she brought in were suddenly acting like her presence was optional. It was a complete reversal of what the fans believed and what the numbers proved, and the timing couldn't have been worse.
Commissioner Cathy Engelbert stepped in and poured gasoline on the fire. In a recent interview on CNBC that can only be described as a PR nightmare, she tried to downplay the toxicity directed at Clark by comparing it to the Magic Johnson and Larry Bird rivalry of the 80s. She sat there, smiling, and spoke about marketing, valuation, and how great this rivalry was for the business of the league.
With Olympic excitement building and Team USA preparing for international dominance, Clark expected to contribute the same way she always had. Instead, she was handed silence, confusion, and humiliation. Witnesses say you could feel the tension in the air as Clark walked off the court that day. She didn't shout, she didn't complain. She just left with a look that said everything. And that moment was only the beginning of the fallout.
It sent a clear signal that the league cares more about the drama and the dollars than the safety and mental well-being of the player bringing in those dollars. The backlash to the commissioner's comments was immediate and furious. The WNBA Players Association, usually a group that stands by the league's growth, had to issue a statement distancing themselves from Engelbert's take. Players like Breanna Stewart and Nafisa Collier had to step up and say what the commissioner wouldn't, that there is no place for hate in the sport.
The shock of that practice didn't come out of nowhere. It was the result of months of tension building under the surface, stretching all the way back to the original Olympic snub. When Caitlin Clark was left off Team USA, the selection committee claimed it was about experience and chemistry. They said she needed more time, more seasoning, more patience. Fans didn't buy it then, and they definitely don't buy it now. That decision created a wound that never fully healed, and this latest benching ripped it wide open from the beginning. Clark's rise disrupted the comfortable rhythm veterans had enjoyed for years. She wasn't supposed to be the star this early. She wasn't supposed to dominate ratings, ticket sales, and national conversations. She wasn't supposed to shift the power structure of the entire league before her rookie year even finished. Yet she did. And instead of embracing the momentum, Team USA doubled down on protecting the old guard. The original snub became a symbol of something bigger. It wasn't just about her missing out on a roster spot. It represented the league's fear of change, fear of new voices, and fear that a young star would outshine the familiar faces that had defined the program for more than a decade. Even when Clark proved she could adapt, even when she showed she could thrive alongside top talent, the committee's reasoning didn't change. And now, with her finally invited to join the team, they reenacted the same pattern. Heard a real chance to integrate. They placed her on the outside, watching. It didn't matter how many fans tuned in to see her. It didn't matter how many jerseys she sold. It didn't matter that players her age in other countries were already leading national teams. Team USA wanted her in the building, but not in control. This second slight carried a different weight. It signaled to Clark that the program's attitude toward her hadn't changed at all. She wasn't seen as an asset. She was a threat to a system built long before she arrived, and that unspoken truth is exactly what pushed tensions toward their breaking point. Because the next move she made would send shockwaves far beyond one practice session. What made this situation explode wasn't just the benching itself, it was the history that came before it. From the moment Caitlin Clark stepped into the league, she became the target of physical play that went far beyond normal competition. Fans watched her get shoved, tripped, blindsided, and hit with full body checks that would have been flagrant fouls in any other league. The moment that truly defined the season was the hip check that sent her crashing to the floor before the ball had even been inbound. And instead of outrage from leadership, Clark got silence. That silence created a message that spread quickly through the league. It told players they could be as physical as they wanted with Clark because nothing serious would happen. Opponents leaned into that climate and treated her like a threat to be physically contained, rather than a rookie learning her way. But what struck fans the hardest wasn't the rough play. It was the sense that officials and executives weren't protecting the sport's most valuable asset. Every hit, every shove, every late whistle, it all added up. Clark took it all in stride. She refused to publicly complain. She refused to feed drama. She focused on basketball. But even the calmest athlete has limits, and every silent bruise added to a growing frustration that few people truly understood. The league seemed content to enjoy the spike in attention she brought, while doing little to shield her from the hostility surrounding her. This environment followed her into Team USA. Several veterans carried the same energy they had during the regular season. Some saw Clark's popularity as undeserved. Others resented the way she overshadowed their legacy. So when she was benched at practice, it didn't feel like a coaching decision. It felt like another extension of that same pattern of exclusion. For Clark, this wasn't just another tough moment. It was the clearest confirmation yet that the disrespect wasn't random. It was organized, it was consistent, and it had followed her into the one place she thought would be immune to it, the national team setup. What happened next didn't just surprise observers, it stunned everyone in the building. The breaking point came from a place no one expected. Just when fans thought the controversy had peaked, Commissioner Cathy Engelbert stepped into the spotlight and made everything worse. During a national interview meant to calm tensions, she tried to frame the growing hostility around Caitlin Clark as simple competitiveness, comparing it to old basketball rivalries. Instead of condemning the targeting, the hate, and the clear divide forming in the sport, she spoke with a smile as if all of it were helping the league grow. That moment felt like a slap in the face to anyone who had watched Clark take hit after hit with no real protection. The reaction was immediate. Fans erupted online, stunned that the commissioner seemed more interested in the marketing value of Clark's struggles than in her safety or well-being. Even players who had stayed quiet began to distance themselves from those comments. It revealed something Clark had been feeling for months. The people running the league were treating her battles as entertainment rather than a serious issue. Inside Team USA, the atmosphere shifted. Some veterans felt validated by Engelbert's framing. Others grew frustrated that their leadership was handling the situation so poorly. Clark, meanwhile, found herself caught in the middle of a storm she never asked for. The league's top figure had essentially signaled that the drama around her was good for business. That message spread quickly, and it poisoned the environment around the national team. Instead of unity, the roster felt divided. Instead of momentum, the practices became tense. Instead of support, Clark faced sideways glances and quiet conversations happening just out of earshot. What should have been an exciting chapter in her career became another reminder that her presence made certain people uncomfortable. Every moment of silence from leadership had already built frustration. But Engelbert's public comments turned that frustration into something heavier. For Clark, the realization hit hard. If the league's highest authority wouldn't defend her, then who would? And more importantly, why should she fight to represent a system that couldn't even acknowledge what she had been going through? That question would lead directly into the decision that shook Team USA to its core. What unfolded next exposed a deeper issue that had been quietly brewing within women's basketball for years, beneath the smiles, the photo ops, and the public displays of unity. There was a powerful divide between the old guard and the new wave of stars. Caitlin Clark wasn't just another rookie. She was the player who pulled women's basketball into a new era. And for some veterans, that shift wasn't exciting. It was threatening. Inside Team USA, certain veterans had built a tight circle over more than a decade. They were the faces of past championships, past Olympics, and past dominance. They were used to being the ones who shaped the team culture, dictated the hierarchy, and commanded the spotlight. Clark's rise disrupted that balance. Her fame wasn't gradual. It was instant. Overnight, she became the name driving ratings, selling jerseys, and filling arenas. And instead of embracing her as the next torchbearer, parts of the old guard treated her like an outsider crashing their private club. The signs had been there. Diana Taurus's viral quote about reality coming for Clark. Snide remarks on broadcasts. Players shaking their heads after reporters mentioned her name. Even subtle on-court body language hinted at tension. None of it was said outright, but it was felt everywhere she went. Clark represented a future the veterans didn't fully control, and some resented her for it. That resentment carried directly into the Team USA camp, where Clark's presence should have strengthened the program. It instead stirred unease among those who feared being overshadowed. Veterans who once held the spotlight began noticing that every camera followed Clark instead. Every question from reporters had her name in it. Every trend online revolved around her highlight plays. Even Aja Wilson, long considered one of the league's biggest stars, found herself being compared to Clark more than ever. This wasn't a simple personality clash. It was a struggle for relevance, a fight between eras, and Clark, intentionally or not, had become the center of that conflict. The truth was becoming impossible to hide. The veterans were losing influence, and the new era was arriving faster than anyone expected. And that pressure is exactly what set the stage for the next dramatic shift. As the tension inside Team USA grew heavier, Caitlin Clark reached a point that every superstar eventually faces. She realized she didn't need the system nearly as much as the system needed her. The league had spent months pretending her impact was exaggerated. But the numbers, the ratings, and the global attention told a different story. Everywhere she went, arenas sold out. Every game she played became a trending moment. Every interview she gave drew more viewers than seasoned veterans had seen in years. The power shift was undeniable, and Clark finally recognized it. Insiders say this was the moment she began pulling back. Not emotionally, strategically. She wasn't going to beg for minutes. She wasn't going to fight for approval. She wasn't going to sit silently while being sidelined for politics. Instead, she started thinking about her own future. Her brand, her influence, her mental and physical well-being. What had once been a dream now felt like a burden she didn't owe anyone. The whispers grew louder. Clark supposedly told those close to her that she was done trying to fit into a space where she clearly wasn't welcomed. She had done everything right during her rookie season. She stayed quiet when everyone else talked. She kept working when others tested her patience. She focused on uplifting the sport, even when it didn't uplift her. But this latest slight, being benched at practice with no explanation, was the final sign she needed. The truth was brutal. Team USA needed her star power far more than she needed their approval. With the next Olympics on home soil in Los Angeles, her presence would define the event. Without her, the excitement drops, the ratings drop. The global spotlight shifts, and Clark understood that leverage fully now. Her decision to walk away wasn't a tantrum. It wasn't emotional impulsiveness. It was a calculated realization that staying would only allow the disrespect to continue. So she stepped out, not with anger, but with certainty. And that decision didn't just shake the locker room, it sent a warning across the entire basketball world. When news of Caitlin Clark stepping back began to spread, the numbers painted a picture more alarming than any headline. Before Clark arrived, the league struggled to fill arenas, struggled to land major TV deals, and struggled to convince casual sports fans to tune in. But the moment she entered the WNBA, everything shifted. Attendance surged across the league. Teams that once played in half-empty buildings suddenly found themselves relocating games to larger arenas. Television ratings tripled. Merchandise sold out within hours. Social media engagement skyrocketed. Every metric the league had been chasing for years suddenly spiked because of one player. And that is what made this moment so devastating. By walking away from Team USA, Clark exposed a truth the league had hoped no one would recognize. She wasn't just a rising star. She was the engine, the momentum, the spark that revived women's basketball at a level unseen in decades. Yet the people benefiting most from her influence were often the ones who treated her with the least respect. Veterans enjoyed upgraded travel because of her impact. Salary negotiations suddenly had more leverage because of her. National broadcasts prioritized games she played in. Corporate sponsors flooded in, all wanting to attach their brands to the Caitlin Clark effect. Even the international buzz around the Olympics leaned heavily on the idea that she would eventually join the team. Her presence guaranteed attention that no marketing campaign could replicate. Yet when the time came to integrate her, the system resisted. Instead of recognizing the moment and celebrating the growth she brought, the old guard pushed back as if protecting a shrinking territory. And that resistance, more than anything, revealed how fragile the league's dynamics truly were. Clark wasn't just challenging history, she was challenging comfort. For years, the league had survived on legacy stars. But survival was no longer enough. Clark represented evolution. The problem was that evolution requires change, and not everyone was ready to let go of their grip on the spotlight. Instead of embracing the future, they treated it like a threat. And now, with Clark stepping away, the numbers showed the cost of that decision. The next domino was about to fall, and it would hit harder than anyone expected. Everything came to a head during the moment that should have silenced every doubt about Caitlin Clark's place among the greats. The All-Star Showdown was supposed to be a lighthearted exhibition, a fun display of talent before the Olympics. Instead, it exposed the truth the veterans had worked so hard to hide. When Clark suited up opposite Team USA, the game quickly turned into a humiliation for the national squad. Her pacing, her vision, her shot-making, her ability to elevate teammates instantly flipped the energy in the arena. Team USA, loaded with veterans and decorated champions, suddenly looked slow and disjointed. Clark's squad looked electric. That was the night fans realized the chemistry excuse had been a cover. It wasn't about fitting in. It wasn't about experience. It was never about basketball. Clark had proven right in front of the entire world that not only could she keep up with the best players in the world, she could lead them. She made the game look easy, while Team USA looked like they were fighting uphill. The clips went viral. The comparisons went viral. And the embarrassment for the old guard settled in immediately. For veterans like Aja Wilson, the shift was unavoidable. The spotlight they once controlled was now glued to Clark. Cameras followed her every move. Analysts praised her impact. Fans cheered louder for her than the entire Team USA bench combined. It was a turning point that exposed how outdated the hierarchy had become. What was meant to be a warm-up for the Olympics turned into a public display of what the future really looked like. And for some players, that reality was hard to swallow. Add to that the Cheryl Swoops drama, the constant belittling from media voices the league continued to platform, and the visible frustration from certain veterans every time Clark's name dominated the headlines. All of it blended into a storm waiting to break. The benching at practice wasn't an isolated event. It was the final spark that ignited everything Clark had been holding in. So when she finally walked away from Team USA, it wasn't a surprise to those who understood what had been happening behind the scenes. It was the natural end to a long line of disrespect, and the first sign that the era of quiet acceptance was officially over. What came next would force the entire basketball world to rethink everything they thought they knew. Caitlin Clark's decision to step away from Team USA wasn't sudden. It was the result of months of pressure, disrespect, and a system that refused to protect or value its biggest star. Her walkout exposed a league divided between the past and the future, and the veterans who once defined the sport now realize they no longer control the momentum. Clark chose her peace, her body, and her dignity over a program that failed her. And as the basketball world scrambles to process the fallout, one truth stands clear. The future arrived, and it refuses to be benched.